So we're going to have a virtual presentation here in a minute. And it will be given by Jordan Hartley, who's a colleague and friend in the people analytics community. Jordan is a senior analytics in L&D at Southwest Airlines, and she's going to walk us through a case study on top tips for visualizing your data. So Jordan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, very well. We're adjusting the volume here in the room, so keep doing your thing, but we're going to work on that in here.
Very loud.
No, it's good to see you, friend. I'll let you take it away. You got about a half an hour to go, and I'll kind of keep an eye on the room for you. But otherwise, everyone, please welcome Jordan.
Sorry, y'all. All right, we're going to talk today about top tips for visualizing your data. And I apologize, I did spell it the American way. I did try at first, but I knew if I switched, I would accidentally write it both ways, so I just stuck to what I knew. But nice to meet everyone. I am a people analytics practitioner and also a graphic designer, so this topic is very near and dear to my heart, and it's something that I focus on often in my day-to-day. And if you didn't pick up by the arrow, that is me. Just thought I would start out with giving you some strong visual cues. But today we're talking about visualization because our brains are hardwired to process images. We actually process visuals much faster than we do text, numbers, any sort of information. And a lot of times, this is actually done subconsciously. So as source of data, what you don't want to do is have your audience start processing your data and your charts and perceiving them as a heavy cognitive load. As soon as they do that, they're less likely to receive the message that you're trying to convey. And also, they're going to spend more time trying to understand the chart that's in front of them rather than garner insight. So when you're visualizing your data, you want to keep in mind it is your responsibility to reduce the perceived cognitive load on the audience. And you do that by making what is complex and making it a lot simpler. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. We're just going to look at a simple turnover line chart and through a few different design techniques, you're going to see how little changes can make a big difference in your messaging. So I decided on giving you all 5 tips to improve your visualization. There is a lot more that we could cover, just not in the time. So these are the ones that I felt were most tactical that you could take back and start implementing as soon as you go back to work. So that's kind of the idea for today. But getting started, so tip 1 is reduce unnecessary clutter. Tip 2, remove grid lines and borders. Tip 3, data labels or access labels, never both. Tip 4, instead of a legend, use direct labeling. And tip 5, use creative attributes strategically. So we'll go into each of these using the same line chart so that you can really get an idea of what each of these means. And as a general rule, these are general rules of thumb, they are best practices. If you have to go against one of them, it's probably not a big deal, you'll just have to use your professional discretion. So keep in mind these are just guidelines and best design practices. So for the sake of the audience, I Power BI or other visualization platforms when building a chart. However, I just use an Excel pivot chart as the example for today, thought that was a level playing ground and something that most people have access to in your organization. And so we'll walk you through the steps using that. But again, if your end goal is to visualize data, you'll probably want to use a platform made for that. But anyway, getting started. So first things first, you want to reduce unnecessary. So white space aids comprehension. A lot of times, people can be a little scared of white space. They want to take up every inch of the slide and overwhelm their audience with every data point that they think is even somewhat relevant. I think a lot of us use this part, or seen a presentation or two that is just overwhelming with how much data is included on every slide. It's actually been found that white space is as important to visualization as pauses are in public speaking. So it is very helpful to get your messaging across. And so some tips for doing so. First thing you'll want to do is if there's any added like field button, or if your filters are showing on the chart, not necessarily helping in the visual message you're trying to convey, get rid of it. If it doesn't help make the information clearer, then you probably don't need it. And so the first thing I would do to make this chart less cluttered is to remove those field buttons. So already looks a lot better in my opinion, a lot less busy, and now you can focus more on the intended data points. Next is going to be the title. So while these can serve a purpose, they are not necessary if you combine them in the title. And a lot of times, let's just say this chart was what was the only thing I was showing on this slide. My title would likely be something along the lines of turnover volume by month for the calendar year 2024. So the title of the chart is unnecessary when it's duplicative. So, and I'm pretty sure we all know January through December are months. So, the month label right there is unnecessary. So go ahead and take those away. And so yeah, this is what you're left with. You can see that the title is still there. It's just serving more as a slide title. Of course, we have the tip, so couldn't move it up there, but you get the general idea. All right, tip 2 is going to be remove grid lines and borders. This can be a little controversial. Some people like grid lines. They actually do very little to aid in visual comprehension. I've actually never sent a chart to an executive where I had removed the grid lines and had them respond, please put the grid lines back in. It's usually something that is not even noticed, but it does add noise to the chart. And if your goal is to reduce as much noise as possible to make data clearer, that is just an easy win. It's also one of the first things I do every time I am editing a chart. So, and the border, it doesn't really serve a purpose. It takes up space. So those are the two quick things that you can go ahead and remove. And then also, a little difficult to highlight in red on this, but the data markers, like the little circles on the line charts representing where the data points are, they are also unnecessary, so we'll remove those as well. And it's already looking a lot cleaner. Next, data labels or axis labels, never both. This one, you are going to have to use your professional discretion on. there are varying opinions. I will share a book at the end that is a resource I use a lot. It heavily influenced my standpoints on data visualization, and uh, my preference versus hers is actually different. And so I think the best approach to this is have one or the other, especially if you think in terms of a dashboard. You're not just going to have one chart. Right now, it might not look so overwhelming having both, but on a dashboard, you're going to have multiple charts usually. That can get cluttered really quickly. My preference is on data labels, and the reason being is I've found that executives often like exact. They want to see what the actuals were, and so having those data labels there is helpful for them. In terms of design practices for that white space, I see why some people do choose to keep the axis labels instead of the data labels. And so we'll show an example of both. So here is what it looks like with the access labels. And then here is what it looks like with the data labels. Again, this is my preference, but I think it just depends on who your audience is and what their preferences are. All right, next is instead of a legend, use direct labeling. So in this example, the legend is not really, it's not necessarily serving a purpose, but it's also not super distracting. Let's say below the button or somewhere in the corner or something like that, that might be asking your audience to kind of interpret it a little bit more. But in general, the legend, if done correctly, is not necessary. So this is what I mean by direct labeling. So putting the data category label at the end of the line chart, or this could also be next to your bar chart and so forth, reduces the need for the legend, thus just reducing the noise. And then finally, use pre-attentive attributes strategically. So there are many pre-attentive attributes. We're just going to focus on color and bold today, but things like different sizes, underlining, orientation, things like that are also pre-attentive attributes. So if anything that draws your attention to a specific data point, sorry, anything that draws your attention to a specific point is going to be a pre-attentive attribute. So my rule of thumb here is use color in chart and bold in insight to draw attention to key data points. So as you can see here on this chart, we're no longer separating voluntary and involuntary color, still labeled accordingly, but where we're focusing the color is on the order that we want to draw attention to. So both voluntary and involuntary turnover traded downward in Q4 aligned with historic trends. So the caveat here being I would ideally what I would start with. So the audience has never seen involuntary as orange. So keep in mind, had you used that in previous slides, you'd want to keep that consistent. But yes, using color and bold strategically can really get the message across, and it draws your attention directly to the data points you want the audience to focus on. And so we've all seen charts that maybe have a few too many colors in the color. You don't need a ton to get the message across. And so I would recommend using grayscale, except on the data you want to draw attention to. So to sum it all up, this is what we started with, and this is what we ended with. So going back, it's very cluttered. There's just unnecessary things like the border. But moving forward, everything is clear, and you know exactly for your eyes to draw to Q4, which is the insight we want across to the audience. So yeah, those are just 5 quick tips that you can implement right away that can improve your visuals greatly. It doesn't have to be some very complex technique. A lot of the stuff is very simple, but it helps a lot. A few more considerations that we're not going to get into too much today, but wanted to mention them. First is color tone. So you want to use cool tones rather than warm tones. Our brains receive cool tones a lot better. Your messaging will be clearer. Another thing is you never want to use red. That signals to our brain alarm. So I'm sure in your data you're not usually trying to signal alarm. So steer clear of red. One exception being for gains or losses, the typical red-green scale sits there, but use it sparingly. Next, accessibility. This is something you want to keep in mind when designing things. You want to make sure your fonts are decent sizes so that the audience can see them well. You also want to be cognizant of color blindness. That could be a disability that's one that could make your data visualization more difficult to interpret. If it is the case, outlining your data in white will not appear important on the slide. It won't change the way the visual works, but it those that have discern between the different data points, they cannot tell based on color or tone alone. Next, chart type. So you want to be intentional with what chart type you use. So today we were looking at month per month, so a big chart trend made sense. Could we have shown this in a different way? Yes, but not effectively. And the resource that I showed you, I believe on the next slide, has a wealth of information on different chart types and the way to use them. So I highly recommend checking that out. And then last, consistency. So I briefly mentioned this earlier, but if you're using one color for a category, such as orange for involuntary, you want to keep it that way throughout the presentation. If I all of a sudden switch to orange for voluntary, that would be very confusing to the audience. You want to keep things as consistent as possible. Also, things like what font you're using and sizes. Those things are also equally important to keep consistent. Whether we realize it or not, our brains are processing these visuals, and the more we see repetition, the more trust we have in the information being shown to us. And so you just want to make sure you're not going against your messaging by making small tweaks that may be insignificant, but distort the message. So there are many different resources in this space, but this is the one that I come back to time and time again, is storytelling with data. So this book reads really easily. It has a ton of the same tips that you saw today, plus many more. And of course, from the title, I'm sure you can tell, it also has information on how to storytell with your data. So that's not something we've really covered today. It's covered the visual and design techniques, but telling a story along with those visual techniques can really improve your messaging when you are presenting data. So I highly recommend this book. The QR code there just links to Amazon. If that's not where you want to purchase it, I just linked it there so you can get the code for the book to make sure you're using the right resource. This also comes in audiobook form. I have both, and I've used both, so definitely recommend one or the other. There's also a YouTube video. So if you search storytelling with data and then Cole, you will find like it's a little over an hour, I believe. And so it's kind of like a summarized version of this book in presentation form, if you prefer that. And then the Storytelling with Data website has a wealth of resources. So a lot of the charts from the chapters are on the website. Also, there are chart type guides. So what chart to use when you're trying to show relationships, what chart to use when you're showing time, things like that. It gives recommendations on when to use what chart. And then, of course, a lot of the information I shared today is what I have learned from this book, and then, of course, throughout my career and my educational background as well. But I hope this was helpful. These are things that I do every time I visualize my data. And with that, I will end it. If you have any questions, let me know.
So much. Great presentation, Jordan. Lots of practical tips. A lot of, I don't know if you saw in the room, a lot of phones were going up, taking pictures and writing notes. So well done. Let me bridge your presentation with a couple kind of high altitude observations. And Jordan, you tell me how these resonate with you. But I think three things with respect to visualization. There's the what, there's the so what, and there's the now what. So at the front end of the pres, Jordan showed a clunky chart. A lot of times for data teams, it's a victory to get the data, to clean it, to get it presentable, and we declare victory when we have that clunky chart available, which in a way it is a victory. But you're not in the data. You're not in the data kind of shipping business only. You're in the storytelling business, right? So executives don't care that it took forever to get the data, and this chart is a victory. They might look at it and go, ugh. So like visualization, like it or not, it matters. It's a credibility burner or earner at first glance visually, to Jordan's point. So think about the what, and think about building that to any extent you can into your plans. Like how many of you have the visualization and storytelling step in your analytic exercise on the project plan? Not many. It's kind of like, oh, we need to rev the deck and make sure it's ready for the CHRO, but making sure that you're telling a story is important. And that goes into the so what. So telling a story is a powerful way to get people to remember something. They might not remember your data points. They might not remember which way the trend line went, but they'll remember the storyline. And then that goes into the now what. They probably will forget that stuff. Let's assume they will. They won't forget how you made them feel, right? So if you're pulling data together, it's visually kind of engaging. You're telling a story. What do you want them to do? I agree and I disagree with Jordan's point on red font. It is a color choice that you should probably generally avoid. But if you want to invoke urgency, you want to invoke action, this is a red flag. That's why it's red on the screen. That's a choice. If you want some awareness and the house isn't burning down, but we need to get on top of X, Y, and Z, choose a visually different choice. But how do you make them feel? You make them feel encouraged. We're trending up and rising. We're flatlining. We're trending down. Think about the feeling that goes along with the story, and you'll increase your odds of getting some action off of your visualizations. So Jordan, I hope I did that justice, and it kind of jives with some of the points that you were presenting here today. Anything you'd add to that, Jordan?
It absolutely did resonate, and I actually like that you disagreed with one of the points I made. There are going to be caveats to every rule. There's also times where I have to kind of go against what I know is design best practices to convey a better message. So make it yours, use your discernment, and yeah, I hope these tips were helpful.
Thanks again so much. Give it up for Jordan, please.